Okay, so what I got today was excessive plantar flexion, specifically with ankle and forefoot contact. This specific gait pattern is actually really interesting to me just because I have it, and I know that I walk differently than everyone else with this gait deviation, and so I'm really happy to kind of share with you what I found specifically about the way I walk in my gait deviation. So enjoy! So this is where I wanted to start. As you can see clearly that there is excessive plantar flexion for the deviation that is at the ankle and the forefoot, and I will be going over different phases about that. So where I'm going to start is going to be at the initial contact phase. My foot, as you can see, is about 13 degrees off the ground, skipping the initial contact step entirely. This is going to affect the weight acceptance functional task, which will also affect the task accomplishment of shock absorption mainly, as well as forward progression, because as you can see, my tibia is more posterior than I would like it to be. And as you can see also in the video that there is no initiation of the heel rocker, so there will be an absence of the heel rocker, which is going to be indicative of the absence of multiple rockers in this video. So as you can see in the loading, mid-stance, and terminal phases, this is going to affect the functional task of single leg stance. And the reason being is because, as you can see here in the loading stance, my foot is up the floor 7 degrees, and at mid-stance I am at 21 degrees. What this means is I'm skipping over my ankle rocker and going more towards my foot and toe rockers in order to help get myself up. The rise on the toe, which is going to be a compensation, is going to help me clear that opposite limb to swing forward. And because I'm on my toes, this is going to affect my task accomplishment of stability as well as forward progression, because my limb is still behind my toes, or my tibia is behind my toes. What's also good to note about here is that my hips are going to be in an anterior tilt position as I'm going through this stance. This is also important to note just because of the way my back is curved. This could definitely cause some lordotic curvature in my spine, as well as give me back problems later on. So now we're in pre-swing, and so the functional task of pre-swing, initial swing, mid-swing, and terminal swing is going to be swinging the limb, which on your toes can definitely be impacted. The functional task is going to be impacted is the swing limb functional task, and the task accomplishment that is going to be affected is forward limb progression and foot clearance. As you can see, I do make a ton of compensation for this, such as my forward limb progression. I turn out my foot around 65 degrees towards the opposite way, so then I can actually not only clear my foot that way, so it's not technically circumduction, but I'm also rising on my toes on the opposite limb at the same time. This helps with foot clearance as well as forward limb progression. So now we are going to be moving on to initial swing. So the functional task is the same for initial swing. We're trying to swing the limb forward. The task accomplishments are going to be forward limb progression and foot clearance. So the accomplishment that is going to be mainly impacted is the foot clearance, because as you can see, I am still rotating my tibia more in that 65 degree mark. However, what is not affected is my knee flexion. So I still get to that 40 degrees to 60 degrees of knee flexion during walking, but my tibia is still going to be rotated more laterally. I also am in excessive pronation at the foot, which can be problematic later on, that I've seen because I have had a lot of ankle injuries due to this. So here we are in mid-swing. So what is interesting about mid-swing is that the task accomplishment for mid-swing foot clearance is going to be mainly impacted in this phase, for me at least, just because, as you can see, my knee is still going to be flexed at about 67 degrees. So this is going to affect the functional task of swinging the limb. So I'm swinging the limb forward, and as I'm swinging that limb forward, my knee is going to be hyperflexed. in order to clear that toe and that foot. And as you can see, you can definitely see it from the side, my hip anterior tilt. And then as you can see in the final photo here, how I need to rise up on that opposite limb in order to also clear the foot that's swinging through, which takes a lot of energy. Now we're heading into terminal swing, which again, the functional task is going to be swinging the limb forward, which is not hindered. However, again, the foot clearance accomplishment task is very much hindered because as you can see in this one, my knee is very extended, so I'm hyperextended, as well as my hips are flexed way more than 20 degrees. So I'm doing more of a trunk tilt in order to get my foot to the ground. In this last picture too, you can definitely see excess supination with that foot, which has also given me problems in the past, again, with a lot of ankle sprains. And as you can see, my ankle is definitely not 0 degrees or at neutral. It is definitely plantar flexed the whole way through this whole swinging phase, and that's going to present its own problems with later on phases as we go back through the initial gait cycle. All right, so there are many different problems that have been expressed to me about the way that I walk in this particular gait cycle. What doctors have told me is that I have tight gastrocs and weak anterior tibialis muscles, which is why I walk on my toes. So that would be one, as well as the other one, which I have gotten from a PT specifically, which my talocrural joint has a limited range of motion, which means that it could be a tight capsule.